Okay. This is just a short presentation. I just wanted to provide a bit of an update on the case studies in the Arctic Resilience Report that the case studies make. And I have a couple of slides to present the sort of framework and approach that we're taking with the case studies. And then hopefully there will be a little bit of time to discuss how to go about adding new case studies for the final report. So currently there are 4 pilot case studies to be included in the interim report. The first one, of course, everybody now here is very familiar with the reindeer herding in Fennoscandia, and Svein Matheson is taking the lead on that case study. I'm not going to speak too much directly to these case studies because after my introduction we'll hear from Martin Robards on the Arctic shipping in the Bering Strait case study, and also duct systems in southwest Yukon. The 4th pilot case study is Resilience Perspectives on Food Security, and that one will progress in about a month's time. I think Birgitta Everdeen is currently involved in a literature review on food and water security as part of the Sustainable Development Working Group and Arctic Assessment and Monitoring Program. And so that literature review will feed into the case study. So just briefly, the interim report has 5 substantive parts to it. We've heard part 1, the methodology, part 2, the thresholds in the Arctic, the 3rd part, the capacity smaller part. The 4 case studies, each will have 2 pages. A brief introduction and 2 pages for each case study. So it's very brief sort of amount of space in the report to convey the information in the case study. And then, of course, part 5, the synthesis. The purpose of the case studies and the contribution to the Arctic Resilience Report. These case studies are all carrying on research that is also already underway. So we're bringing a resilience lens, a resilience perspective to research that has started at different points. And contribution is, again, through this resilience lens, better understanding of some of the system dynamics, providing examples within the framework of resilience assessment of how external drivers can interact with the system dynamics to influence that system's resilience and capacity to cope with change over time and to adapt. The case studies, I think, importantly ground these very theoretical concepts of resilience, and I think that's actually a critical function of the case studies, is they ground these concepts in particular places at a particular time. They bring the faces and the spaces to the resilience report, and also life interactions and resource development that are pressing concerns in the Arctic. The case studies also inform understanding for decision making while considering links to policy and strategies for building resilience. Part of the framework, I have 2 slides, and this is a template that the case study leads have been working with. And again, this is just a way to capture some information about resilience dimensions of these case studies. So there are many different dimensions to these case studies and different approaches, and this is one tool that we're using, a template, to try to get pieces of the story that, again, would inform the study from a resilience perspective. The summary of the case study will be the narrative, so that will be the substantive part of the case study where the story is told. There's emphasis being put on what are the important ecosystem services including provisioning services, but also cultural services that are provided in the system, and what are the impacts on those ecosystem services. Scales, external drivers of change. We went through that model with the exercise earlier this morning. Some of the, as Kathy calls it, steep social, technological, environmental, economic, and political. And then again, looking at the internal system dynamics. This is a little bit more term dynamics that are important for resilience understanding. Okay, I'm not going to go into this. This is the second part of the template, other than to say that we hope to include models, figures, illustrations, visual representations of the case studies as well to help convey some of that information. And this is my last slide, and I think that there will be room, obviously, in the final report, Arctic Resilience Report, for additional case studies. And so now is an opportune time to consider other case studies. Obviously, the Arctic is very large, very diverse, many, many different types of social ecological systems. We could never get a representation of the Arctic through a limited number. Add to these case studies with additional systems. And some of the criteria that we're looking at that is up for discussion, adding to the diversity of geographical coverage, linking to ongoing research efforts and relevant partners, linking to other Arctic Council projects, and also importantly including both success stories but also case studies where the outcomes may be transformation for better or for worse. And then as well, some of the case studies may also provide an opportunity to contribute to some of the capacity building activities of the Arctic Resilience Report, including the Arctic University course on resilience, offer tangible examples of state changes in the Arctic. And so I think what we can do is maybe come back to that in the discussion part of this session. We have two presentations. Annika, I'm looking at you wondering if Martin, they're pre-recorded, so they can go anytime. Okay, so maybe we'll have them give their presentations, and then if there's any questions about the process of adding new case studies, then we can follow that up in the discussion.